Right now.
Okay, bring it on, we're ready to go, okay?
Okay, we're live.
Okay, May 24th, we will start with the roll call. We'll start with Jason Thielen.
Jason Thielen present.
Greg Gordon present.
Kelly Law present.
Jessica Smuin present.
Lon Lot present.
Okay, and we will have a prayer by Kelly Law and a pledge led by Jessica after.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be here this evening and to discuss matters of the city. We pray that we may be guided to make the best decisions possible for our area, our city, and the people that live in it. We're grateful for all the service that those who work for the city to keep it running, to keep everyone safe, and pray that thou will bless them. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll be starting on our work session. First item will be Ryan Packer, who's going to give us an update on research he's done on fiber. If you want to come on up, you just need to state your name and your address, and then you can go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, my name's Ryan Packer. I live at 1233 Elkridge Lane here in Alpine. And by way of introduction, I've spent the last 16 years of my career working for Omniture and Adobe, doing big data analytics, running software and development and operations. And so I only point that out to say that my team and I and Chris Wareham here spent a fair amount of time dealing with large infrastructure. So we spent about $100 million a year on network and infrastructure. So I'm very familiar with internet technologies. I am not very familiar with government. So this is my first time interacting in pretty much any way, shape, or form with local government or really government of any kind. And that'll be relevant a little bit later. So yeah, I wanted to start out by, this is kind of a statement that I came up with. As internet access becomes increasingly important, the city of Alpine wants to make sure all residents have access to high quality, high speed broadband. There's probably some fine tuning that we can do there, but I think that's generally what we're trying to look at, is the possibility of providing high quality, high speed internet for residents here in Alpine. I also want to be really clear up front. I wish I was coming in here today with really great news, like, hey, here's a clear path to get this done. But I just want to set expectations properly. I think there are a lot of challenges for this here in Alpine, and that's what we'll go through a little bit today. So what have we done so far? I've been meeting with various providers, cities, and other government entities. So you can see here the list of providers that I've been working with. I've had face-to-face meetings with almost all of these folks. Strata, still working on scheduling, American Fork, same. But all of these other groups I've had in-depth conversations with to kind of get a lay of the land and hopefully come back to you all and present the findings. A couple of really important government entities that you may or may not be familiar with. The Utah Broadband Center was established by the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, and they are really going to be the governing body for distributing funds here in the state of Utah. So they're going to be an important group for us to have a relationship with. I've joined their, I don't know, right now I'm on an email list. I don't know that it's much more than that, but I've joined forces with them to try and stay up to date on everything that's happening kind of at the state level. And then the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. They are the federal government agency that is responsible for distributing the funds that we'll talk about that are available through a federal funding program. So what I'd hope to do this evening, just give you a little bit of background, make sure we're on the same page in terms of internet technologies and some of the options that we have. Talk about the challenges that I've uncovered, and a lot of it may not be new news for you in terms of things that are unique to Alpine, that make the project particularly challenging here. A few high-level options as I see it, and then my recommended next steps. So first, high level, just wanted to go over kind of what we think about in terms of options for broadband access here in Alpine. Fiber is obviously what we're focused on right now, has the highest capacity. It's also the most future-proof in terms of being a long-term technology that offers a lot of upside in terms of just technologically, the capability and the capacity of the fiber that gets laid today. We're barely scratching the surface in terms of the bandwidth that could actually be achieved across that fiber connection. The endpoints make a difference, but the actual fiber that gets laid, the costly infrastructure that we would consider taking on, that's by far the most future-proof option that we have. I'm not going to go through all of the numbers here, but you can take a look at this. Cable, I think most of us are familiar with that. One of the downsides is the shared bandwidth, and the other thing that most people note is that it's not symmetrical. And by that, the up speed and the down speeds are very different. And typically for something like Comcast, you're looking at 3 to 35 megabit per second up. That's becoming a bigger and bigger deal. For the most part, a lot of us have gotten very comfortable with download speeds being the primary and kind of the only thing we care about. As more and more people are interacting online, video conference in particular demands fast up speeds as well. And so that's increasingly important. DSL, there are improving technologies on the DSL front, but not likely to come to Alpine, not something that we're seeing a lot of investment in. 5G is actually pretty interesting. There are some challenges there, but that's one that is fairly affordable. Today, T-Mobile is available in some parts of Alpine. Verizon is probably the leader in this space, in the 5G wireless space. It's not available here. It requires fiber to end up to the nodes, and to get the new speeds that everybody's talking about, it requires a much higher density than what you would typically recognize, with the cell infrastructure that we have today. So for that to really be viable in terms of the high speed capacity, we would need additional cell towers and investment from companies like Verizon, T-Mobile, and others. Starlink is promising as well. It has challenges with line of sight. It's a relatively new technology. But the reason I think it's important to cover some of this, when you think about a project like fiber, it is a big investment that will pay for itself over a long period of time. So one of the biggest risks with a fiber project is the potential for other technologies coming in and being disruptive. I'm relatively confident that we're not going to see something that makes fiber obsolete. It's possible that we would see something that is more cost effective compared to fiber. But when you look at these other technologies, there's really nothing that competes today from a fiber perspective. And I should have said at the beginning, I have some time hopefully allocated at the end for Q&A, but feel free to interrupt if there are questions along the way. One of the important just things to note, when we talk about standards for service, the federal government has defined 25 down and 3 up. Anything less than that is considered unserved. And we have large pockets of Alpine today that would fall into that category. Underserved is anything under 100 megabits per second down and 20 megabits per second up. We have obviously an even larger percentage of the community that falls into that category. It's a little bit difficult to say with any precision. There are maps that are provided by the service providers to the government, to the state government, and we have access to that. It's public, but they're not a very good representation of what's really happening. The state has put out something called the Utah Broadband Test, and so people can self-opt into going in and taking a speed test. That gives kind of a measured result. Those results are also publicly available, and I've looked at that, and you can see, but there just aren't enough people in Alpine that have done that to this point. So there's like 15 or 20 households so far, last time I looked. But a lot of red dots, red being unserved on that map. The other thing, just by way of background, and again, this may be something that you're familiar with, but when we talk about bringing in broadband options, there's kind of two primary models. The first is a utility model where the city puts in the infrastructure, builds, owns, and operates that infrastructure. That may be done through a contractor, and typically that would be the case, but it would still be run by the city like a utility. On the other end of the spectrum, free market, that's essentially what we have today. You have companies that if they see an opportunity, they come in. If they don't see an opportunity, they don't. The challenge that we have is that the free market opportunity doesn't really work for a community like Alpine. There's not enough financial incentive for a third party to come in and try and make money in a community like ours. And that's true for a lot of communities across the state of Utah. And so most communities are moving to something like a hybrid model. And it's not, there's options across the entire spectrum here. I've taken the companies that I have been working with and kind of put them along this axis, but I just want to put an asterisk here. Don't take this as being precision. Strata does tend to operate primarily more toward this utility model, and Comcast obviously is almost exclusively more kind of in the free market model. But all of these companies can operate kind of across the spectrum. Centricom being a great example. They have deals where they come in and they help a community create something like a utility model. They also have places where they come in fact, here in Alpine, where they have come in and we've allowed them to be an internet service provider. And as a result, they're operating with the goal of making money. Utopia is unique. And I think most of you are familiar with Utopia. And I think a lot of you, if not all of you, heard a presentation from their CEO. And so I won't spend a lot of time on that model, but I'll just recap it quickly by saying that the Utopia model really is kind of right in the middle of that hybrid model, in that they take on behalf of the city, they do the bonding, but really the city is still on the hook and has an obligation to provide a certain number of subscribers. It's owned essentially by the communities that are their customers. And so it really is kind of this middle ground between government and private entity. So that's super high level. There are a lot of pros and cons that we could talk about with the individual providers, but I think for the sake of time, I'm going to skip past this and talk about more specific options for Alpine. If we have time, we can come back to this, or if there are specific questions about providers, we can come back to it. First major challenge, I think, is obvious, the lack of density here in Alpine. So the cost for us to deploy a fiber network is roughly twice that of most comparable communities. So if you look at like a Pleasant Grove or Cedar Hills, the cost for us would be almost double per household what it costs them. And it's simply a function of the space between the homes, the lot sizes. The second big challenge is Comcast. So we've been able to get some pretty good data on what percentage of the community is serviced by Comcast today. And it's about 88%. Their service is good enough. The customer service, I think most people generally recognize as being not ideal. There's a fair amount of dissatisfaction with the customer service. And this upload speeds are slow. There's a challenge there just from a technology perspective. That's something that they're investing in, but they're never going to get to the symmetrical. It's just a function of how the technology that they use to send the data across cable, coaxial cable, as opposed to fiber. That's always going to be a challenge, but it's good enough for most people. And a lot of customers like being able to bundle their internet, their TV, their phone service. And there's a lot of inertia with any incumbent. And so the fact that they have such a large penetration in the community makes coming in and getting a bunch of people to move to some other solution very challenging. They're also looking at 3 additional projects that would bring them to between 96 and 99% coverage within Alpine. And they can get most of that just by coming in and providing service up at the Cove and Box Elder and at the Ridge. So Comcast is particularly challenging. Third big challenge is interest rates. I think as everybody knows, interest rates are going up relatively quickly for a big capital investment project like deploying fiber. You're going to bond for that, whether it's directly or indirectly. And so the interest rate for those bonds has a huge impact on what the ultimate cost is. In the time that I've been looking at this, if you just take Utopia as an example, when I started talking with them, they felt like we would probably need about a 60% take rate in order to cover the cost. And in that time, just because of the increase in interest rates, we're now looking at something that would be closer to a 70% take rate. So it's substantial. The other thing that I have heard, and this is something that you all would know better than I, but as I've talked to different providers, there is at least a perception, if not a reality, that the easements in Alpine are more difficult to work with than in most communities, that we have large portions of the community that don't have the typical right-of-way easement that I think most of us are familiar with in terms of providing access. And so that's something that I need to look into additionally and either, help people overcome that mental hurdle, or we need to look at ways around that. But that would mean going out into the street as opposed to using the right-of-way easement. And then the last challenge, the fact that Alpine is primarily a residential community. In any community, business highly subsidizes residential internet. That's just kind of the way that all of these companies work. Businesses are charged obviously a significantly higher rate, and the result is that it's more affordable for the rest of the community. So those are the big challenges that we have. From a funding perspective, there are kind of three primary routes that we want to be familiar with. So the first option is to simply charge more user fees. As we think about offering a service, we could charge an additional $10 to $20. That would still have us be relatively competitive with something like a Comcast and would bring the take rate down significantly. Second big thing that I need your help with is thinking about adjacent projects. So there are a ton of different things that we could look at. So I'll give you one specific example. If there's money being invested currently for road improvement or other road infrastructure programs, if we can get conduit in the ground as roads are being improved and perhaps get funding for road improvement that also includes putting conduit in the ground, that would offset a tremendous amount of the cost for putting in a fiber network. There are other things that we could think about in terms of smart city opportunities. Wildfire prevention is an interesting opportunity. There are a lot of technologies that are starting to gain traction for monitoring the community in terms of fire that could be tied into a fiber network that would allow us to have much quicker and earlier detection, particularly of wildfire, which is obviously a pretty important topic for our community. So that may be a way to get some funding to offset the cost of a fiber project. And then the third option is, of course, the federal funding. So just to make sure, again, that we're all on the same page, there was a bill passed this past fall that will provide $65 billion to ensure that everyone in America has access to high-speed broadband. For me, 65 billion is kind of an unfathomable number. And so to just put it into perspective, not that this is how it would ever be done, but if the money were to be given out on a per capita basis, Alpine would get something just north of $3 million. So in my head, I'm kind of thinking that's a rough place to start. I think we should be looking at how we can get something like 3 to 5 million out of this program. It's administered by the NTIA, the group that I mentioned earlier. I've been participating in their webinars and various Zoom meetings with officials there to just make sure that we have as much understanding as we can about how the process is going to work. But it's tricky. There are a handful of challenges. The majority of the money that's going to be available, so like the 45 billion, is going to be administered through the state. And so that's where we would need to work very closely with the Utah Broadband Center. That in and of itself isn't necessarily a challenge, but it slows things down significantly. They're going to be looking for all of the different communities within Utah to come up with a kind of an overall plan. And then they'll present that plan and apply for the grant funding, and we could potentially be a sub-grantee underneath their overall master plan, but it requires this master plan.
So the money allocated for the middle mile,
Yes,
is that, would we qualify for that with the percentage that we have that are unserved and underserved? Because I know they have certain qualifiers, right?
yeah,
And I felt like, at least with the previous rounds of grants, that we didn't qualify as an underserved community, but I'm hearing differently from you.
I think there is a good possibility that we could.
Okay.
The challenge with the middle mile, there are two things with the middle mile program that I think would be challenging. One, the overall dollar amount is much smaller. So it's
Yeah.
a billion of the 65 billion. Second thing is that any infrastructure that was laid would need to be what we call dark fiber. So essentially it's not, it wouldn't be that it would be our fiber running our ISP. It would be something that would be open to whoever else wants to use it. Now, practically speaking, it's not like we're sitting between, two other big communities where we're going to have a lot of other people coming in. But the intent of the middle mile program is to connect, that middle mile. And so the infrastructure is there. It's intended to be available for other ISPs to use, not just one ISP in particular. And then the last challenge is just with both of these, the notice of funding, like the notice of funding opportunity document for the middle mile program was like 65 pages long. For the other program, the main program, it's a 98-page document. I made it through the first 40 pages before I wanted to throw up. And so you really need, one of the challenges with the federal funding is you honestly need something like a lobbyist or somebody who can really spend almost full time going and looking at how these programs work and advocating for a city like Alpine, working, across. So it may be very difficult to do without something like a lobbyist. And then the other challenge that I mentioned here, the very earliest funding is early in 2023. And realistically, it's more of a 5-year time frame that goes from 2024 out. And so it makes it a little bit difficult for us to sit here today and think about, where should we go without any sort of clear indication as to the probability of receiving funds. That's something that we could probably get more clarity on, but again, would require somebody with a lot more experience than me navigating, large government grant application processes. So where does that leave Alpine? I think we have 3 primary options. And again, these are super high level, but I think it helps set a framework for where we can go from here. One option is to simply double down with Comcast. They already have incentive to and plans to build out and cover 100% of the community. I don't think it's a long-term investment. It doesn't provide competition. There are challenges there, but we could work with Comcast to build out 100% of the city. We could work with one of the other core fiber providers like Strata, Centricom, or Utah Broadband to complete smaller projects to the unserved and underserved areas. So that would be a more targeted approach. We would be more likely to get federal funding because we could make a strong argument that we were going in and serving, in particular, the unserved and underserved parts of our community. And then the third option is to do what I think we would like to do, but may or may not be feasible, but to pursue the full build out for the full community.
So can you do a hybrid of the second and the third?
Absolutely.
To go for the grants for the underserved and the unserved with the purpose of the full build out and have it supplement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, that would be, there's a lot to navigate with the funding, but that would be my approach. If we were to go for the full build out, it would be to try and get funding for a targeted build out and then make the rest of it financially feasible just based on the subscriber and the take rates.
Ryan, is there also an option? And I know it's not like, bandwidth wise, not the fastest, but another option to pull just some fiber to certain points in the city and provide wireless option to those underserved people. So we're not having to build out the whole city with fiber. We're just taking it to certain points where we can reach the people with some wireless options.
Yeah, for sure. I think, that would require involvement with larger companies like T-Mobile and Verizon. And it's probably not the fiber. It's actually interesting. If you look at where we have wireless coverage, I think it's not coincidental, but they've run fiber up to the cove. So they actually have a point up there. They have in some of the further outlying regions. If you look at, there's not coverage, for example, with T-Mobile right in the middle, like right here, I think we don't have coverage. So there's fiber to here. There's fiber to this building that Verizon could negotiate to leverage, but it's constructing the cell towers and the equipment. I don't know enough about the exact density that you would need to have with the wireless towers. So I can't say whether or not, I can't provide an opinion as to whether or not that would be a smart thing to pursue, but it's definitely worth looking into.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, I know I'm going a little bit long. Recommended next steps, and then this my last slide. So my recommendation is to, first of all, create a formal committee to continue pursuing this. And while I'm more than happy to participate on that committee, I do think it should be led by someone who has more experience. This really isn't a technology project. As I've gotten deeper and deeper into it, my technology background has been a little bit helpful, but we really need somebody who has experience navigating, like I said, large government funding projects. I have some names. I'm sure those members of the city council here would probably be better resources for identifying people that might be good for leading a committee. Second thing, I know we put out a survey. I don't know what the results of that have been. I've seen the survey questions. I think they get at the right things, but I think this is the most important thing that we can do right now is get a clear understanding of what the overall residents of Alpine are looking for. If there is huge demand and a willingness to change, that's a completely different picture than if we get 10 or 20% of the community that's really upset, but the other 80% are not likely going to make a change. And so my recommendation is either that we like flyers on every door, or contract with somebody like Y2 Analytics to go out and conduct a professionally run survey. But for me, I would like to see north of 1,000 households actually completing the survey. And I don't know that we'll get there. I don't know if you know how many people have responded thus far, but
Yeah,
How many did you get?
so I think it's about 110 so far.
okay. So it's better, that's helpful. And I if it's possible, I'd love to see the data, but I think we need to get a better sample size. And then in the meantime, trying to explore some of these adjacent projects. These are things that I'm not likely to have an insight into what the city's planning. Road projects in particular, are there things that we can do there to start taking advantage now? And then again, maybe we have this in place already today, but I know a lot of communities are starting to make things like burying conduit a part of developers' responsibilities as we expand. It might be a little too late for that. I don't know that we've got massive amounts of development. Probably would have been a good thing to do if we didn't already with the major developments that have gone in the past few years. But those are the things that I would look at in the meantime. So again, apologies for being long-winded. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do you know if it's advantageous to make it a utility more, meaning you can more ubiquitously charge for this service, maybe even on their utility bill, even if they're not using it?
Yeah.
Although that's kind of shady, but and also you know what I mean? Like, hey, let's put it on everyone's bill. $10 for whatever. And also, Sheen, we're doing some stuff with the irrigation, right? The pressurized irrigation, or redoing all those pipes and stuff. I mean,
we will have some projects coming up.
I wonder if that could dovetail into something like this.
So usually we're 100% in the street. We have, I think we have some mapping that shows all of the subdivisions. It may need to be updated the last couple of years or something.
Mhm.
And every subdivision plat that I've ever looked at in the city has included.
Okay,
So I don't think it's as bad as maybe some of it sound. The downtown area, there's not a lot of subdivisions. It's mostly those lots exactly.
Got it.
And that wouldn't be what's there. But we would have a lot of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we could look at the possibility of kind of shelving off to the side on a water line replacement project. You know, our preference always is for those type of curves
Yeah.
or sidewalk. Complex with street, but it's
so to your question on utility, I mean, the clear advantage of the utility model is that it becomes financially feasible much more easily. It becomes a political issue, you know, so there are lots of people that don't want to be told that they have to get their internet provider from or internet service from the city. That's something I'll let you guys figure out. The other big advantage of the utility model is if you do get a large enough subscription base, you're able to capture the upside. Whereas if you contract with somebody like Utopia, and let's say you exceeded the subscription rate, that's not a problem that I think we'll have here. But if you did, and that's why a lot of company or cities like Lehigh, American Fork is leaning toward going more toward the utility model because they believe they can get enough subscribers that there's it'll generate money for them. It's a revenue generator.
They
But
also have the infrastructure too. They've got the manpower where we're a much smaller city with a much smaller staff that I don't know if we'd be able to take on something like that without additional
I
headcount.
think we definitely need like a third party to run it.
yeah, so as I've looked at it, even if you go with a company like Strata, like that's kind of their bread and butter is coming in and providing it, and they operate it largely. But even for something like that, if you go with the utility model, you're going to need, the estimates vary, but somewhere between 2 and 6 city employees to handle the interface with a company like Strata. So it's not personally, I haven't explored too far down that road just because it doesn't seem to be as viable given the size of Alpine's infrastructure today.
Any other questions?
Though I do know, I don't know the details, but Providence, I think,
Yep.
kind of southern Cache Valley.
Yep.
I know they were in Strata.
Yep. Providence and Spanish Fork, I think I can't remember. I don't think they did it through Strata, but they are
They
doing
have
a
their
similar,
own- they have
doing
their
their
own,
own thing
but
that
the
they're running
state
as.
laws changed, so you can't do that all.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that utility model works within current state law. with the Strata.
There has to be an arm's length deal there, but effectively it works much like a utility.
One interesting point with, one of our disadvantages is our age of city and how we build out, right? But we do have some phone lines that expand kind of through the city. So this downtown area, they may not have easements, but they probably have a phone line out front. And likewise, running fiber or something to the kind of the corners of the city, that could happen on phone lines pretty easily, as they've done in parts of the city already. I think it was Woodland Hills, I think is on Utopia, and I think they're exceeding 80% take rate. If they're similar to us, and there are some dissimilarities, but that is kind of a comp city.
Yeah, most of the Utopia communities are have take rates somewhere between 30 and 45%. I think Linden is probably the most comparable, and if I remember correctly, their take rate is around 60%, 59%. But there are some outliers that may or may not be quite as comparable. But yeah, different options there.
Are there any other questions for Ryan? Ryan, thank you so much for
Yeah.
spending all your time and educating us on this. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, will you do me a favor and email me a copy of your presentation?
Yeah,
And
I'll
then
do that right now.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I will. Okay, moving on, if we can just kind of maybe go down, starting with Lon about, and if you guys can just kind of give a brief summary of your council assignments and what's been going on with your assignments.
I reported here a few times ago about the Utah Lake Commission. Don't know that we need to move much into that, other than the fact I do have there's a field trip this Thursday, I think the 26th, on down at the Provo River Delta project down in Provo. And there'll be several of us going to that, looking at that. The June sucker recovery has done well, and this project is to help in that. At our last meeting, though, a couple things that that were talked about, and that was March 17th. So the lake level as of March 1st, so we've gone a few months now past that, but was just slightly worse than last year. But the soil moisture was better this year than last year. Now, we've seen a different spring though than we did last year, which means that I think it's not the same. I haven't heard a report recently of snowpack, but that is one of the concerns the Utah Lake Commission, and as they work through things, watch. And as of March 1st, it was only 3.8 feet below compromise, and Deer Creek was fuller than last year. This year, Deer Creek was fuller than last year. Anyway, those are some things from the Utah Lake Commission. Any questions on that at all? Okay. As for the emergency preparedness, Austin, could you pull up the city website on the screen? So as you're working on the website, then Jessica or whoever is doing that, go to emergency preparedness right down there. Click. Some of these links are no good any longer. But if you were to go to scroll down a little more. Okay, I guess it's not on there. We need to update links on this for the emergency preparedness. And also, Chief Patton, I looked at the fire department. There's a couple things in the fire department's web site that have dead ends to their links. They don't generate as people are negotiating through these emergency deals. And so we do need to, I guess I'll follow up on some of those kind of things then. But they're also actually scroll up again, Austin, or scroll, go to A to Z, Alpine Guide A to Z, and go to emergency preparedness. It doesn't link to anything there. I'm trying to remember where I found the an emergency preparedness coordinator is in here that is no longer,
In Alpine.
is no longer. I have also been working, have talked with Chief Patton for a little while ago, and he directed me to Jake Beck and work with Jake on radio communications. I'm actually also part in the Alpine West stake, part of the emergency preparedness entity there, and have developed some simple reporting techniques on that the Alpine West stake is working on within there. I've also worked with the Alpine stake at one point a year ago, and they have a little different way of doing it. Each group have a little different way. But also in talking with Shane, we have a command center, and I think everyone needs to know where that command center is,
Right.
who is supposed to go to the command center.
Because Shane, didn't you work with Mag with some kind of catastrophic event? It's kind of like this, isn't it, or no?
Yeah, well, we have a emergency response plan. It's
Okay.
probably 8 maybe. Because before I became city administrator, Rich worked on it. There really hasn't been anything done since. So it probably needs to be looked at, but the MAC plan is more earthquake, well,
Yeah,
it's
catastrophic.
related but different. It's kind of a mitigation plan.
Right. Okay.
So still working on that.
I was gonna
do-
say, will you make sure you work with Jessica so
Yeah.
that all these links
Yeah.
are working and we have pertinent information on our website for our residents?
Yeah, so we haven't really had any since the flood. At the time the flood hit us, that was a all hands on deck type
Right.
thing. People came from every part of the community to start helping. And that actually showed us a few flaws in how we would manage an incident. And I've been working on incident management things, but the city has it in line. It's just that our one of the mayors before was out on filling sandbags and should have been at the incident command center instead of filling sandbags, and things, just weren't up to par when it comes to commanding an incident. We got to realize that Shane should be here in the event of an incident. Yet if he's clear down in Lakeshore and unable to get up here very quick, there's who starts that, right?
Right,
And
so if
so-
you can come up with all that
Well,
stuff, all right.
yeah, and we do have that mostly. Well, Shane has it together. It's there together. It's just, do we know, right? Mayor, you're supposed to be at the incident command center. I would probably be at the incident. Mayor Pro Tem would be there in case Mayor couldn't be. Whether you're running the incident or not is another thing. But the fire department are going to be
Right,
elsewhere. They're probably, if it's not major here, they're going to be in other areas that we're going to have to command smaller portions of of the incident. Anyway, so that's what I have been working on, and obviously we get a little complacent when there's nothing happening.
well, knock on
And
wood.
But anyway.
Thank
Well,
you, Lon.
And can I just add, I'm wondering too, because we have 3 stakes and I know each stake has their own command center. If at the minimum, we just have an annual audit and update of who the command leads are for each, because if we have access and communication with those 3 stake leaders, that is our network and coverage of our community.
Yeah, so each one of those really need to know where they come to,
Right.
because their separate units know where they go to, but where
Mhm.
does the state come to? And actually, we've had a radio system working before, and they had do a monthly check from each of the states calling in, but that's no longer. And we do need to look at and maybe start budgeting for some radios.
They didn't work great.
The radios we had before just didn't quite work well. But so I do have been working on that as well, so.
But yeah, I mean, we could get complacent, but you know, a fire is not a very uncommon thing in our hills. And I was with the Salt Lake County mayor one weekend, and when they had a fire running, and they had these types of things very much down to a smooth operation.
Yeah.
Jessica, hey, so AYC last week, they swore in their new 40 youth council. So they're really excited to be involved. They're planning for Alpine days. They have, you know, AYC is they do a lot of the groundwork that I don't know if our community makes the connection. So I'm working hard on making sure that the public understands that AYC, you know, is an extension of the city council, and that they really do provide a tremendous amount of service. We have the Memorial Day program coming up, and they do, I don't know how many flags, and we'll be helping with the choir and desserts, and so they are with donuts. So they're active. When you see them, thank them for their commitment. I think, okay, so the cemetery committee, I think I'll just let Shane kind of give an update on the expansion, and I'm not sure if there was any movement on the acquisition. If you have anything else to talk about.
Yeah, do you want me to give an
Do
update
that
on those
now.
things now?
Oh,
or-
sure, why not?
Okay, so for the cemetery expansion, right now, if you go up on the north end of the cemetery, there's a lot of oak brush laying on the ground. Some has been piled up and hauled off. It's going a little bit slow. We got some bids to do it and kind of went with the low bid, which we've used this company before. They just don't have a lot of employees. The other bid that we got was very high. They probably would have had an army up there, I don't know, but so that's happening. The other item that we discussed last week is moving slow. The sellers haven't decided where they want to go. They've kind of changed what they're trying to obtain on the other end. That's why I stepped out here to take the call from the agent. So I'll get you an update as soon as I know more.
Okay, and then the historical committee, not really a committee, but just overseeing historical preservation. We were able to move forward with protecting the poppies and the ruins. And we had Chris Merritt, and he brought a couple of staff members to tour the site. And he suggested that we consider inventorying all of our historical assets. So we're going to be looking more into that, and it will probably be a deeper dive with the new committee that's going to be set up. But the nice thing about the committee is it will then put us in a category to start being able to qualify for historical grants. And the website update, we're just plugging away on it. We've met all our deliverable dates. And Austin, we get our big reveal coming up early June, is that right?
So the reveal is actually a month after that. So that's what we discussed. That's not the website reveal.
Okay,
It's something, yeah, that's something.
something else.
Yeah, something else.
But it's been a good process. And so keep giving information like, Lon, I appreciate that. We'll make sure that, because I think what would end up happening is they would try to create those links, and then if they weren't an active link, they would just not include them. So anything like that that we need to make sure is part of our website, just shoot me a text and I'll add it to the list. Is there anything else, Austin, you can think of?
No, yeah, I mean, it's coming along. So we've gone through the design. We kind of have a design, what do you call it? A color palette and that kind of stuff figured out. We've sent them some pictures. So it's really in the design phase. And then we've also kind of worked out some of the mechanics of how the website's going to work. But the stuff that Lon caught, that's good because they are, I think next month or maybe it's this month, they're actually going to be transferring each page over one at a time. And so all those links get transferred over. And if they're broken links, they get transferred over. So it's good to know that they don't work, right?
There's about 3 on that.
Okay, and that's it.
Okay, Kelly?
Okay. Alpine Days. Can't wait. Go to, if you want, you can do it on your spare time. Go to alpinedays.com. The schedule's on there, the events are on there. You can register. You can even buy your family night barbecue tickets there already right now. So it's cool stuff. And then Austin, I emailed you a little JPEG. Do you think you can pull that up? This is the proposed layout. One thing, there's a couple of things on here that are interesting. One, you'll see food trucks in this cul-de-sac. Fire chief told me no food trucks in that cul-de-sac, so that's where they put their stuff. So we need to relocate those. There's quite an interest in participating this year from people like food trucks and other things. You'll notice the carnival area, which we haven't had before. So they've actually booked an actual carnival rides and stuff that people will be able to participate in. And then you'll see where the boutique stuff is set up now. That's why I talked about the pickleball courts last time. So this is still WIP. There's going to be some changes to it.
They're gonna have to adjust the boutique area because I think the pickleball area probably will not be available anymore.
And we'll get more into that
Okay.
right after this, but still in the work session.
Okay.
Yeah, slow, like I said, work in progress, but yeah, I hadn't heard an update on the pickleball thing.
Yeah.
Good thing is I see room to grow up in the north for the boutiques, lots
Maybe.
of grass.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to go up north. The issue there, I think, is the fireworks setup, but so Cammie's doing an amazing job and everything's working well there so far. And Jessica also did a huge favor to us and helped coordinate with the Alpine Youth Council for that, for stuff they're gonna do there. Trails, parks, and open spaces, we've had a lot of discussion around that stuff lately. So I'm waiting for an update on the flow. Have you heard on the
Yeah.
flow trail?
Yeah, I actually got, and sorry, my mic apparently was not on earlier. Everybody that's listening, I apologize. Jed actually sent me a couple of pictures and an update. They had met with the contractor and I think either Will or Breezy or both, I think sometime today. The multi-use trail, which I think is kind of the northernmost trail of the three in that project, is about 2/3 done. Said it looks great. I think the mayor's been up there a little bit, haven't you? You haven't?
No, they closed it,
Okay.
but now that you say I can, I'll be up there.
I think maybe Will might have tested it. I'm not sure.
The up trail?
Just checking things out. But I've heard that I haven't seen it myself, but I heard it looks really good. I think they're planning to be complete probably in first part of July. So.
Cool, thanks.
One other thing I can mention just for everyone, we put all these trails sign kiosks up, but a lot of them don't have any maps in. About the time that we got the last ones in, we started this project and we want to make sure we get those new trails surveyed and don't have out-of-date maps as soon as they're put up. So that's why they're not up right now.
So, and also with the trails, I'm meeting with Draper City tomorrow at 4 p.m. if you have time. I know it's kind of last minute. It's
Oh.
graduation.
I'll be
Oh, your
at the
graduation.
Lone Peak
Never mind.
graduation.
It's all good.
Thanks for meeting with them. Yeah, we got the whole Draper fence thing going on. We approved the parking lot. We've got, just pop that. National Trail Day, June 4th, is that right?
Mhm. It's on your phone.
June 4th, National Trail Day. So Jessica's organized that and there's a bunch of events going on there. Do we have that on our website yet?
We're going to, as soon
It'll
as
be
you
on our-
guys thumbs up it. We're gonna have
Okay.
horseback riding and
Looks great.
beginner rides and
Business liaison, business is great.
Okay. Okay, Greg?
For water, we held the start of year water board meeting as required. Shane and staff would know a lot more about this than I would, but it started water on time. And part of the thinking there was that, we would just dry out the ground and put stress early in the season. One thing to think about is, the water that's coming through is we wouldn't save. We basically only have one retention, which at peak, right, is about a day's worth. And so that's kind of why we don't have like a big lake where we're saving water. Anyway, good discussion with some of the shareholders. It was interesting. And anyway,
A couple of sparks flew. but
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah, for traffic and public safety. I worked with some of the probably, I don't know, 40 or 60 parents and administrators at Timberline and Westfield Elementary on some of the traffic and safety concerns around there. And we've brought those back to Shane and Jed, and they were great to look into some of those in terms of signs at crosswalks and looking at some of those intersections and things of that nature. We also talked more about that South Canyon Crest crosswalk, which has always been a challenging one, and what to do there. So that was great. And then lastly, we have the Lambert Park Preservation Committee meeting tomorrow evening here. And so I think we're making good progress on that, and more to be done there.
Are you guys gonna be close to coming up with a recommendation, or?
I think so. I suspect we'll need another meeting, but I think we are
So-
getting close to coming back to council with the recommendation.
After
Yeah,
tomorrow night's meeting or the meeting after that?
probably the one after, but
Okay.
yeah.
You could just, stay timely. I was just checking back. I think we're supposed to get a recommendation in 90 days. I get it. You have a hard time scheduling. But if we
Yeah.
could, if you can get a recommendation to us, that would be great. I don't want to rush it because I want the best solution, but I would also, like for it to be moving forward. Thank you. Jason?
Real quick, on the Lone Peak Public Safety Board, we approved the 2022-2023 budget and included wage increases for the police and fire. This is something we're gonna have to still figure out how we're going to pay for those, but the approval was, which we all agreed here in our council, was 21% wage increase for the police and 27% wage increase for the fire. The fire pertained a little bit to hiring the right people for the right time to be able to cover everything. It'll help us with some of the part-time stuff, full-time.
So the 27% isn't actually a wage increase per person. It's more that you went from part-time, you went from one person that was part-time to a full-time employee. So the cost
I guess
is
I'm
different.
talking about how much increase it was that we are gonna
Total,
need to
yeah.
cover as a city. But you're right, Mayor Carla.
Because it just sounded like a lot. I'm like, no, we didn't give anyone that much of a.
And the police were 21%. We did an evaluation based on the different cities. We didn't want to be at the very top. We didn't want to be at the very bottom. We wanted to kind of be middle. And that's still what that required us to increase those rates and salaries too. It seems, in my opinion, and I'll let maybe the fire chief talk, but it seems like we're doing a good job in the fire department, finding, keeping, retaining people. We might need to hire a couple to replace these part-timers, but the retention seems to have been very good. Not the same on the police side of things. We have quite a few openings. There haven't been a lot of people applying for those jobs. It's just my personal opinion, but we don't sometimes treat the police lately as respectful as we should, and I think we should. And so there's not as many people going through the academies, since there's just not enough people applying. So we do have some issues there on the police side to find ways to find good people, but they're doing the best job they can. We just want to say thank you to the fire chief, Chief Patton, for finally selling that Zodiac boat. The boat that we all would, oh, but we approved it. We got approved. So that's going to be out of there, and we're going to make some money on that boat that will never be used. So thank you so much on that.
Maybe just something added on the police. The wages were a factor in some people not being here, but it's kind of a stopgap. With some of those positions being open, there were some adjustments made right now in this budget year to kind of help with that, and hopefully the ball will get rolling now to getting employees and retaining them. And the new wage scale and everything will kick in July 1st. So there are some temporary measures being.
But overall, both the police and fire chiefs expressed appreciation for our support, for us taking into account what we needed to do to try to help them find and retain good employees so that we can maximize safety in our city. So they were thankful.
And then Eagle Scouts, are you getting many
I'm an Eagle
requests?
Scout, no, other than a couple that have come in here.
Okay.
Probably get one every 3 months.
If you guys can push cleaning up the seedling cages.
Oh, yeah.
In Lambert Park, that would be great. I think they're ready to come off and be collected. I put it in Just Serve. We'll see if anyone picks it up. They have to approve it. It takes a week or two.
Yeah. Any estimates on take on the plants?
I can't tell because they all kind of look this, it all looks like weeds to me. So
I'll have to
lawn
go
would
up there.
probably be
I'll have to go
better.
up there and look,
I'm gonna-
because I was there when we
50%.
planted them.
I'm gonna say 6, maybe a little over half, maybe 66. I mean, I.
That's
thought it
really
was
good.
Actually,
I would say more like 30 to
Here?
35%. Yeah,
I'm not glass. half full.
I know, but I looked, that's about what it looked like.
even that, as dry as it's been, it seems like that would be a pretty good.
I thought that was pretty good. And I
project.
think that's what, since there isn't any artificial watering after that first
Yeah.
year, I thought that was pretty good. I don't think we have a 50 or 60% from what I could tell.
Mhm.
But some of those plants that I'm counting, it could just be weeds too. I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay, can we move on from that? Okay, so next item is the consent calendar.
So
I'm sorry.
just maybe while we're in the work session.
Oh,
let-
okay.
Let me, it's gonna happen right after this on the consent calendar, hopefully, but let me just explain the pickleball court bid process and everything. So we prepared an RFP, put that out. We received bids yesterday, and there were 3 bids that came in. The bids were right around 176,000, 270,000, and 315,000. Jed kind of dug into the low bid and didn't feel comfortable that they had included everything that they should have, and so worked with the contractor back and forth and found that there were about $50,000 worth of things that had not been included. So that would put that up roughly 226. We'd budgeted 120, and this was back, things were crazy, but not super crazy. And now they're super, super crazy. So we discussed how to handle this, gave Craig an early morning phone call. What we decided to do is basically reject all the bids. We did this without your permission, but thought you'd probably go along with it, and it comes to a good ending. Kind of redid the scope of work and took out the excavation and prep work portion of the project. as well as the concrete flat work outside of the court area. Because those are things that we can do in-house. We're down a guy right now, which hurts us, but there's things we can do to make it happen. So we reissued that. We had those due, everybody agreed, yeah, we'll give you a bid and take the excavation out. So those were due at 5 o'clock today. But we had to have this on the agenda by 5 yesterday. So that's why you didn't get any information yesterday. So the results of those bids. Oh, and by the way, Landon and Jen Landon spent some time today. Took some shots over on the site and kind of figured up that our hard cost would be around 36,000 for our part of the work. So the bids came back. The tennis company that has built all the courts that we have currently, they came back with a bid of 159,819. So they were 270. So we felt good about that. The next bid was Park and Tennis Courts. They were 169,195 plus another probably roughly 3,200 for road base and fine grading. They had 6,400, but that's for 4 inches and we'd specified 2 inches. So in that neighborhood, so they'd still be higher than the tennis company or renter. And then the other bid was higher. It was 218 and some change, plus they had a bunch of options and some of the options should have been included in the base. So what we're recommending is that we go with the tennis company and that we take care of the excavating in-house. And so that project would be in the roughly 200,000 range. So we just have to take some additional funds out of our capital improvement fund and potentially some of our recreation impact fees because it is a new project. So we can do it. Where Alpine Days kind of comes into play, Kelly, we talked about holding off until after. One concern is concrete availability right now is really tough. The cement powder plant in Leamington, Utah, down west of Nephi, is broke down. And what we've been told, they're having a hard time getting parts. So cement powder is actually being shipped from back east, clear to here to, for these companies to be able to make concrete. And so they jack the price up and it never seems to come down. We went through one of these cement powder shortages probably 5 or 6 years ago or so. And it just threw a wrench in everything. So the little guys that just pour a driveway here or there, they can't even get concrete right now. And so my fear is if we wait until after Alpine Days that we may not, it may cost more and we may not get it done. So
Unless we wait until the recession and get a really good deal.
yeah. So, and it's possible. I mean, I don't know, under 2% unemployment and some of those things could make some changes, but it never seems like the concrete comes back down in price once they raise it. So we can do this project. We were going to do it once and ended up putting it off, and it cost us, we didn't bid it then, but it cost us quite a bit of money, I think. And it could happen again. It could go the other way, possibly, but I don't think it would be significant in my experience. But It's possible that we could have the courts, a lot of the work done before Alpine Days. We haven't gotten down to the schedule. I'm not sure what you put in here for completion.
Austin, can you put back up the picture of Alpine Days? Who have that picture up?
Yeah, they had booths set up in that area.
I just want to see if there's a way it could.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah,
Can it go, like,
boutique.
up along here?
You could potentially, I don't know about what the fireworks setup and all that stuff looks like, because all that stuff's happening on the same day. But one of the ideas I floated with the chiefs was actually closing a road. Like if you look at 100 South, you could line all the food trucks up there, have boutiques there, and just not have traffic or parking on that road.
Maybe,
Oh, that's
maybe
major.
instead of 100 South, maybe this, what is it, 6th?
Maybe that one over there.
That would be probably more like it, but I think the fireworks are in this cul-de-sac up here in the north, from what I remember. I think that's where they're launched from. But the boutique will be shut down before the fireworks ever go off. From what I remember.
Okay, well, I'll have a conversation with Cammy, because we gotta relocate the food trucks.
And
anyway.
one idea is you could shut down its center, and I think it's 200. Because that's a horseshoe street. So they can go the other way. You could put all the food trucks on that little walk area where they do chocolate block.
Are you talking about where? Right here?
It's right here.
Or are you talking about up
This
here?
is a horseshoe. This is a horseshoe.
Yeah,
So if this road is closed, it affects nobody.
Oh, but they
Right.
can detour around.
Right, and that's such a nice area for eating. It's kind of a berm. And so if you get your food,
I'll
That
talk to him
isn't-
about it, because if we close that
Okay,
road, you're
please.
basically closing that parking lot there as well.
no, if you go, you could do,
You could do it from here. No, you do it from here to here. So the parking lot's still open.
Oh, from there to there.
Yeah.
Okay,
It would still, yeah.
And then this way they,
Interesting.
wait, that's not the horseshoe. You're talking about the horseshoes right here. So it would be from here to.
or
here.
they could
That's
go
okay.
out back from
It's-
center. They still can go out
You
back
can
from
still go to
center.
center.
You still have a
They
way
can
to
get out.
Alpine Boulevard.
yeah, you still have a way to get in and
So
out.
these people, sorry, they just go here and these people.
Okay, well, we'll
We'll
talk about it with the Alpine Days Committee. So thanks.
So it's possible, we'll know more once we meet the contractor. It's possible the courts could be to a point to get out something on them. I don't know if they'd be surfaced by then. But let's see.
I think as long as it's not like just a big old crazy mess when we do Alpine Days.
See, and we'll have to talk to the contractor anyway, because we put a note in here that if the courts cannot be completed by August 5th, then the project must not start until after Alpine Days, which ends October 3rd or August 13th. So it's 3 weeks till our next council meeting, but we can send an email out and I can communicate with you, Kelly, as soon as we talk with the contractor, assuming the council awards the project. And we could start to coordinate.
Great.
Anything else, Shane?
No.
Okay, so we can move on to the consent calendar. Are there any questions on the consent calendar?
Yeah, Mayor, would you make comment on the committees? What the purpose of the committees are, and maybe
So-
just a public clarification on
Right,
that?
so on each of the resolutions, it states their purpose. So the Main Street Committee is to work towards, I think it was having them suggest improvements for Main Street for uniform look. And then this also allows both Main Street and the Historic Preservation Commission, by formally adopting those and having these formal committees, it allows them to also go for state funding and county funding, depending on what the projects are, to help fund these committees to have a revenue stream to actually do something and make those improvements or help. I know like Provo has tapped into state and federal funding to rejuvenate their main street. They're even getting funding for the shop owners to kind of help with their awnings and having a more uniform look going straight down their main street. Things like that. So we can do that, something similar. And a lot of that is, especially the Main Street Committee, because our population went over 10,000, we're no longer considered rural. So that put us in another category that allowed us to be able to go for this funding that we haven't been able to before.
And so Main Street, this doesn't relate to the Gateway Historic.
No,
District.
as
So-
far as, I mean, we could task them with that. But the vision now is to, I think we're starting off with, the flower pots on Legacy Park. And then, Shane had a great idea that maybe, if we'd like that, we can maybe go for additional funding, or whatnot to have those go down Main Street and have the businesses help maintain it, right? It's like maybe with the grant money, we can give them those planters and then they can, kind of carry that through. Or some, or whatever else they want to come up with also, just whatever they can do. I feel like our Main Street kind of has this disheveled look. And so if we can kind of, improve it.
So
Things
it's
come up.
beautification, not buildings, architecture, signage, right, at this point.
No, not at this point. I mean, definitely they can give those suggestions. All of this is, so kind of like the Trails Committee, they can come up with recommendations to City Council with those things also. I don't think any of that is off the table, and the intent is that we assign a City Council person to each of these committees so that there's continuity. So that, City Council can be made aware and see what kind of things are coming down the line and, what they need help with.
And is that Jessica for both of these?
I think Jessica wanted the Main Street.
Well, I'm historical. Actually, in the minutes, I was historical from the beginning.
Oh, you were, yeah.
Mhm. So,
And then she wanted Main Street too. So I
well,
don't
to
know, we'll
me,
have to
it's connected, but if somebody else wants to take on Main Street, I think that's great.
Okay.
Who wants to take on Main Street? Anything to help our Main Street.
Yeah, to make it move forward. If you have an interest, let me know. We'll do that as a sidebar. But we need to get these formed and formalized before we can do anything. And then I've already had people starting to apply. They've filled out applications. So if you guys know anyone that's interested, please have them contact me. I've been emailing people applications and they've been sending it back. So it's been good.
Craig, on item D, section 2, it does say commission meetings shall be held at least twice a year.
The intent was to put in quarterly.
Okay. All right. That's in the ordinance then. It's
So that's in the
Yeah.
historical.
She-
Or does historical need to meet 4 times a year?
well, to do the apply for funding, it's a 4-time, it's a
Okay.
quarter,
So it
is
is.
what I understood.
But so I wondered on
So-
that language on committees, if we should say 4 times a year unless otherwise specified or something. Which could be more or less.
So
I think the grant
Austin-
request says you have to meet at least 4 times.
I believe it was quarterly, but hey, Austin, do you remember on the historical, did it say that it only needed to be
I believe the historic was actually only 2 times
2
per year.
times? So maybe that's why that one was different.
So
It's so
it doesn't
different
have to
ones.
be.
So the historic one doesn't have to be. The Main
Okay.
Street one does have to be quarterly.
Okay, so this is the historical one. that I was looking at.
Right along those lines is, in our advisory board ordinance, it
That's
says
what
there
he
will
said,
be
so he said
5
twice.
members. And then the historical one says at least 5. And I wondered if we should maybe just go with a more flexible general ordinance there that's at least 5.
Well, the mother ordinance that we looked at said 5, so we'd have to change the mother ordinance to reflect that same language.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
And it is on the agenda here because some tweaks need to be
Yeah.
made to kind of line up with how these committees ended up. So that would be a relatively
Yeah,
easy
I left my drafts out in the car, so I'm gonna go get them here when you
So-
start doing other stuff.
So that would work. I mean, if we were to say at least quarterly unless otherwise specified, and then at least 5 committee members.
Who would decide the more than 5 at least?
I guess they're appointed by mayor.
And then approved by council. That's the way we've been doing it. So it'd be appointed by me and then approved by council. Or ratified. What was it?
I'm kind of, well, it's always with advice and consent of the
Yes,
council,
that's what it was.
but I'm talking
Yeah.
about the number,
But the
you know, if we say,
Yeah,
The advisory boards ordinance, that one said.
how are we gonna decide
Exactly.
more than 5?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there could be more than 5, but I don't know. I feel like any of these committees, as soon as they get larger, they get kind of unruly. But
Could we just say minimum of 5? If somebody's super passionate, you wouldn't want to turn that
Yeah.
6th person
I
down.
could say at least 5.
Okay, let me run out, when you get to the other item, let me run out the car and go.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I have a change in the minutes since I didn't email them in. Bonnie, can I change page 4, line 41? Where it says to add on to the end of Shane Sorensen read the Alpine City's code on landscaping, and then stating the site plan shall contain a landscape plan showing the location, type, and initial size of all planting materials. And then on number 44, you ready, Bonnie? On 44, say 43, where it says Jason Thielen said it feels like it would be a hazard at night having a non-ADA curb cut in front. So it wants to understand if that's a requirement. So just not a curb cut, but a non-ADA curb cut. And lastly, on number 45 below that, well, not lastly, Jason Thielen has a concern about whether the lighting in the parking lot would be enough. And then the addition of that, and felt the city's ordinance required the site plan to include a lighting plan. And lastly, page number 51 on page 4. Jason Thielen made the motion. It says Jessica Thielen second the motion, and Jessica, I don't think your last name's Thielen.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
Hey, Austin, could you pull up that fireworks map? In the northwest corner of the city, there by Lupine and Pfeifferhorn. If you look on the east side and north, right, there's gotta be, half a mile, right, of before you get to sort of the mountainside and some of these areas. But right here at Lupine, that's only 2 homes from an area that has like all these dry grasses and has an extreme wildfire risk. So I thought we should look at that. And then behind this Pfeifferhorn down at the bottom there is a pocket of dry grass, down there. I think Highland mows it down, but it does have some scrub area down here. Put that in white. But I don't know. Chief, did you have any thoughts on that? I mean, is this a concern, or is this, just fine? This is kind of what I'm talking about, these borders, because from here to here, it's, there's just 2 homes right here, and then it's this whole big mountainside of dry grass.
I don't know that it has the same oak brush through the subdivision, but the more, I mean, the further down you wanna come off those mountains, as far as safety goes, if we can shoot a firework and hit the mountains from where we're shooting that firework, I don't think we should be shooting. That would be my opinion. Because if it can, it will, and they'll shoot them. Cycle.
Yeah, I live pretty close there, and I was gonna bring up the same thing that Greg did, I think. I mean,
I'll take it right down Westwood.
yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay, so just have it come all the way down.
Yep.
Yeah.
To Westfield?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually pockets of a lot of dry stuff and open lots and like Greg said, that's when you look at how far Lupine is from Hog Hollow, it's like 2 houses.
Yeah. I've always been surprised that we, that you could go above Westfield. Yeah, there's pockets and up at Lupine, it seems extremely close.
So when whoever makes the motion, make sure that you make that adjustment that the band goes all the way down to Westfield Road. Okay. Are there any other questions on the consent calendar? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar as proposed with the changes that the fire restriction map be marked as fireworks ban 2022 to the north of Westfield Road in northwest above Westfield Road all the way up. And that on ordinance 2022-07A, that the language be adjusted in point 3.24.020 to read shall be composed of at least 5 members instead of 5 members, and that where it says meet at least quarterly, we add after that unless otherwise specified for the commission.
Okay, there's been a motion. Yes, no.
He did mention
And
that.
yes, and with the adjustments to the minutes that Jason Thielen and Long Lot submitted.
We also need to clarify the pickleball court thing,
Yes,
that it's
would be Renner,
Renner.
would be the contractor, the amount would be $159,819.
Okay, and for the pickleball courts, that Renner would be the contractor for the amount of say that again, Shane.
159.
159,819.
159,819. Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion by Greg Gordon, seconded by Lon Lot. Let's do a roll call vote. I'm
Shane,
sorry, before we vote, let's have a discussion.
Do we need to specify that the city will take care of the excavation? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you want, we'll do
Yeah.
it. We'll get it
I
done.
mean, just do it. Okay, good.
Okay, roll call vote.
Lon Lot, yes.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Kelly Law, yes.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Okay, let's move on to item number 4. I didn't get any slips for public comment and there's nobody here, so we'll move on to item number 5, reports and presentations. Shane?
We don't have any.
Okay, we'll go on to item number 6. Item A, site plan for Always Doggy Wash.
So that the applicant is not ready for tonight, so they wanted to request that they be withheld. from the
Okay,
meeting.
so we'll move on to item
But-
B.
On that though, in the packet, we still see kind of 2 landscape plans and 2 signage plans. And I don't know if he.
Or
worked
there's
out the
still
lighting.
2 of each, okay,
Yeah, there's 2 different versions shown, so.
okay.
They basically don't have a landscape plan in here. So I didn't know.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that they had a landscape plan, yeah, so, and that's one of the things we're working on, that they don't quite have ready yet, so.
Okay.
And also, I mean, so they don't come, a lighting plan is also required by the ordinance. So,
Just really quick, so our lighting plan, we typically ask for like to show the parking lot, how it's illuminated, how much light is hitting different parts of the parking lot. Does the council want to see anything more than that? For example, maybe a light on the front of the building, since it's a 24-hour?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Also with it being in the historic gateway committee, when other people come in and bring that to us, we look at the lighting they're putting in there and make sure it adheres to the historic gateway committee's prior
Like the light post, right?
light posts,
Yeah.
or, I mean, this was built a long time ago, so I don't know if they had to do everything that our existing ordinance requires, but it does require a landscape plan as well as lighting plans. So unless I'm reading something wrong, I hope they would bring that to us.
Does it require lighting if it's already an existing approved
So
usage?
initial site plans do require a lighting plan, but let's say it was like, where the bell tower, or the clock tower is. If you were building a new building in there and the parking lot already had lighting, in those situations, in the past, we've used that lighting plan that was approved prior, right? So this, the Alpine Animal Hospital's been there for a long time. The lighting may not, may or may not meet our current code, I don't know.
But to your point, Jessica, it does say in the historic gateway that a site plan shall be filed with the city planner whenever an existing commercial structure is proposed to be altered, reconstruction, enlarged, remodeled. And goes on and on. So that has to be done. And part of the site plan that says in here has to be a lighting plan, parking plan. So unless this is different somehow because it's a smaller facility, the ordinance clearly states that if a site plan is required with these requirements, if it's an existing building that's been modified, enlarged, improved upon, added to, and that's in 3.11.030.
So have they been made aware that they need to do that?
Yes, they are aware of that, and that's one of the reasons why they're not ready for
Okay,
tonight.
perfect. Okay, can we move on to item B, the AT&T lease resolution?
Yeah, so AT&T worked through the process to get their site plan approved for going on the existing cell tower in Lambert Park. They would be the third, that is a city-owned facility, the pole is. They would be the third provider to be located on that tower. So they gave us just kind of their standard agreement. I've got several changes on here, and what I propose is maybe, I actually gave Austin a red line copy, my copy of these things. There's a handful of things, maybe I can go through them, and then if anyone else has comments, we could talk about it and talk about the lease rate. So go down just a little bit. So from the site plan that was approved, the pad that they're looking at is 18 by 26. It's situated on the west side of the existing fenced in area there for the other providers. So that's 468 square feet. Going on to the second page, under term, just so you know what the terms are here. The initial lease term is proposed to be 5 years. And then there would be automatic renewals for 5 additional 5-year terms. After that, page 3, when this came to me, it had $1,500 in there, and I said the last one we worked on was 2,200, and they said, I'll just redline that on there. It wasn't a big deal, so.
She told
I
me
did it.
4,500.
Item C, let's see. Oh, I told them, I said, I don't like this open-ended. If you need more land, you just go grab it and then you pay the city $10 a square foot for it. I said, I had this note written on there, additional areas subject to prior written approval of the city, and I would bring that to city council. And he said, it's not a big deal. Let's just scratch the whole paragraph. So that's what I followed up with. And then on D in that same section, they talk a lot about the wind load area. And when we go a little bit further into it, it discusses I think it's 35,000 square inches is what they need right now. And I said, first of all, is that available? And he said, yes, we've done this structural, everything's fine for that, because we would have had no idea. But there's some language in here that kind of says if we need more and the tower has to be beefed up or whatever, it would be the city's responsibility. And I said, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, and he agreed that was one-sided and that can be fixed. So that will be taken care of. On item E, these always read weird. The monthly rent will increase by 10% over the applicable rent in effect during the previous 5-year term. I know what they meant there was 2% per year. And he agreed that's, I didn't want to get in a fight down the road of, we think it's 10% per year, because that's very uncommon. 2% is pretty standard based on our other contracts.
Not gonna lie, 10% sounded better for us.
Yeah. Page 4 on insurance. They have no problem going to 2 million. Craig and I had talked about this. So that's not an issue. We do have one out there that's 3 million, but that's the one where the tower was initially built. And they may have had a little extra coverage while they were building that, and then they eventually deeded it over to the city. And the other one is 1 million, but Craig had recommended at least 2 million on this. So over to page 7, this is where the wind load and everything comes into play. So we'll work this so it's not so lopsided and that they're responsible. They don't want to be responsible if another one of the other 2 providers cause an issue. They don't want to have to beef up the tower for them. And I think this is unlikely that this would happen anyway. But it's just kind of cover the bases in the contract and agreement. So that will either be taken out. It sounded like he may not be opposed to just coming out, or made so it's more beneficial to the city. I'd let them know that the city does not have a power meter up there. There's power at the site, but each provider has their own meter, and he was aware of that. I think this is geared for other situations. On page 9 on the taxes, landlord shall be responsible for property taxes. The other agreements we have read the same way.
Careful.
We'll just leave that one there.
Do we pay property taxes on it to the
Don't,
county?
Jason.
Jason.
I wasn't part of the discussion.
Hey Shane, one thing real quick, there's a couple of things where I read, I'm trying to find it now. That we'll remedy certain situations in 24 hours, and others with notice in 45 days. Are those all kind of standard things that everybody else has in their?
They
jobs?
are, we've never had an issue period with the other two providers. And the one has been on the tower, T-Mobile has been on, I think, since 2008. We've never had a single issue.
Okay.
So. But if you want to highlight a certain paragraph or whatever, we can make sure we look into it in detail.
And then this one, yeah, I'll do that. And then in number 12, where we pay the tenant $500 per day.
Which page are you on?
Because we can't,
Right there.
because we
Access.
aren't providing access for that.
Oh, yeah. We have no motorized vehicles in Lambert Park, but these guys have agreements with us and we've never told them that they can't go up there.
And they have 24/7 access.
And I've seen them up there.
Yeah, I've never seen them abuse anything or cause any kind of problems or anything, so.
Okay.
There's an edit on the memorandum of lease towards the end. They just have
That's the last page.
a different entity.
Also at the start, it references Community of Christ
Yeah,
Lutheran Brethren.
That's the reference right there.
That's the reference.
They have it corrected at the bottom for Alpine City, but that needs to be fixed. And everything else, did that cover the comments you had?
Yeah. They did.
These guys seem very, very anxious. They said, AT&T really wants to get on a tower here. So I think they would be moving forward fairly quickly, if I understood correctly. So.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mayor, couple things. It did seem pretty one-sided, the whole contract, pretty alleviates, or it, are we good with the legal, if there's any legal proceedings that we waive our rights to certain things in there?
A jury trial.
Is that?
That's fairly common.
Okay.
I've got a lease with the cell tower folks and we agreed to that. So that's.
Okay, and then there was one, I was trying to find it, that it would be an improved road that we would be,
Well, I didn't see that.
and I was trying to find it.
There's something that says if the road basically needs maintenance,
We don't have to pave it or anything.
No.
Okay.
No, and the road,
Um,
it's been washed a little bit and we haven't really went up there and fixed it and they've not complained. You can take a truck up there, no problem.
And we haven't, I was trying to think on the other group, we never required them any landscaping, right?
We didn't. It actually says in here that we'd be responsible.
Yeah, we'd be responsible for maintenance on it, and then one other thing, let me find it here. You took care of the financial things that I was concerned about. One other thing was the utilities, electricity. Do the others have meters up there? And they will have their own meters,
Yes.
so that we're not responsible for paying, because it does say in here that we would pay for it unless we meter it, and then we would charge them, so.
Yeah, I let him know that we have no power.
Okay.
We have no access to power up there.
Okay. Okay,
I think it says something if the city provides power or utilities
Yeah.
or something like that.
okay, that's all, Mayor.
I did do, and I meant to make this into a PDF to share here, but over 20 years with those increases, that would be about 641,000 in revenue.
And that compares, it's similar to our recent leases.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Discussions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I need to grab this. Sorry.
2022-23.
Yeah.
I can just suggest you either have Craig and I review the
Yeah.
final document, or if you want it brought back.
I'm seeing in 23 or 24. Do we know which one this is ultimately? The ordinance number or
20,
resolution?
I'm showing 2022-24.
No, it's 23.
23.
It's resolution, not an ordinance.
In the packet we've got is 24.
Yeah.
It's 23. Okay.
That is what I have here. So 23, but it is a resolution.
It is.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution R 2022-23 with the following conditions, that staff and our attorney review the changes that Shane has gone over with AT&T, and there was one other thing I had. Okay. With AT&T.
Why don't we just suggest in substantially the form as presented tonight?
Substantially. Insubstantially the form as presented tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a motion to pass resolution R 22-23. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. If there's no discussion, let's move to a vote, starting from Jason Thielen.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Kelly Law, yes.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Lon Lot, yes.
Okay, let's move on to item C, resolution R 22-24, participation in the Utah County CDBG program.
Since you met with, I'm not even
Sure.
sure the lady's name, Mayor.
Jessica. So yeah, it's a division of MAG, and we used to be involved in the program, but there was a misunderstanding with median income. So they're a department of HUD. So they're partially federally funded and state funded. And so when I was trying to figure out what this, she was like, hey, you guys were part of it, but you're not anymore. And when I asked Shane, he said, yeah, I don't think we qualify because our median income is so much higher. And when I spoke to her, she's like, a couple of things have changed. And basically what this allows us to do is when we pass this resolution and to agree to be part of this cooperation or intellectual cooperation agreement, it basically allows us grant money for either a senior citizen center and also anything to do with handicap access and whatnot. So Cedar Hills just recently last year got $90,000 to help with handicap parking spaces and also their sidewalks to make it handicap friendly. So those two services don't have to do with median income, because what they do is, I guess they calculate that, saying that most senior citizens, their average income is below the median income, and same thing with the handicap. And so by passing this resolution, it allows us to be eligible to go through their grant cycle, which starts in the next couple of months. So I guess we applied for something similar to this years ago and did not get it, but I think with this new change, and I'm going to be part of the committee. So hopefully we'll be able to get more funding.
And you're seeing this as something that could be help with the cost of the community center?
Yes, so when I spoke to her, I said, like, we're gonna be adding on and creating a fire station on the east side because it was just in my office right behind me. And then I said, for the older section, we'd like to renovate that and do a community center and a senior citizen center together. She's like, yeah, that would qualify. So I don't know the amounts, but I think it'll be a decent amount. I don't think it's in the millions, but like I said, Cedar Hill's got 90,000 just for their handicap parking spaces and cutting their curbs so that it's handicap friendly. So I figure Cedar Hill's qualified, we would too. And I think they need people to apply. That's what it sounded like from me. And I think that's why they reached out to us.
Any obligations on the city's part? for
No,
this?
none at all. Not, in fact, she was saying, you can be part of it, but it doesn't mean that you have to even apply for any of our grants.
Are we,
And I said, why would we not want to?
but are we forced to do anything else that the county might
No,
choose to do?
no.
There's there's a couple of things that are kind of interesting depending on how you interpret it. So like if you go to page 10, number 10, the city will have to affirm or adopt a policy prohibiting the use of excessive force by law enforcement
Right.
agencies for
Right.
demonstrations against any individuals engaged in nonviolent civil rights demonstrations and policy of enforcing applicable state and local laws against physically.
So
barring entrance
Shane
or exit to
noticed that and
facility,
picked that
et cetera,
out.
et cetera.
But if you think about it, this is that's part of the federal requirement. And I think when you're dealing with the HUD system, if you guys are familiar with that, that's federally funded housing. I think that's an issue.
I know. I also have seen how people in our federal government have defined a nonviolent peaceful protest over the past couple of years, and that concerns me.
Yeah, I read it. and
People
thought-
can light your city on fire and it's peaceful.
Yeah. I wondered if two different programs got mixed and Carla clarified.
No, I responded and I said, hey, this just kind of seems out of place. And she's like, yeah, that's a federal mandate. And I think it's, the way she explained it, it's an issue of more inner city.
I wish Chief William were here to see how he interprets that and see if he can enforce it the way he would like to enforce it.
I don't
I
think we
think-
have, I
I
think they probably already have things in place
I
that are
seem to
very
remember
similar.
like a year ago, I think they adopted something like that.
One interesting thing around this, so the federal government, I don't know if it's Department of Transportation, but has a huge, I don't know how many billions for improving pedestrian safety. And what they've stated is they would be prioritizing grants to cities that have taken active steps to improve it. So that's why maybe things like this or, crosswalks that we do now could help our positioning. I think it begins start of next year for those funds.
Any other questions, Kelly?
No.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution R 2022-23 to participate in the Utah County CDBG program.
I think it's
24.
24.
No,
They're
our packets are
Wrong.
not right.
backwards.
24.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to pass resolution R 22-24. Any discussion? If not, we'll start with the roll call vote from Lon Lot.
Yes,
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Say your name, yes or no.
Kelly Long, no.
Greg Gordon, yes.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Okay, it passes. Item D, summer 2022 food trucks. Jessica, is that you?
So a few years ago, Alpine City had food trucks. I met with Elliot from the Utah Food Truck League and they take on the whole process. They get everything set up. They don't really need to be involved as far as any staff requirements. And so it seemed like a good idea to activate our food trucks again. It's not any revenue for us, but it's also not an expense. It's just I consider it as a service for the community.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Jessica. Does someone kind of do pickup that night? I mean, or is that just, you know? But
We could end up with some trash management. I've asked AYC if that's something they would like to step up and help. I think, you know, if we have it a couple of times and we're like, the trash is out of control, then we may need to look at adding a little bit of help that evening. One of the questions I had is right now, we have 8 Tuesdays scheduled. He said that July 3rd, oftentimes around a holiday like that, won't be a great turnout. But I also don't know if we just want to take something out of the middle, but we could under his advisement. So the questions I have, do we want to include July 3rd? And I think then also that
July 3rd is a Sunday.
Okay, then July 5th, sorry, July 5th.
Yeah.
So do we want to remove July 5th? Then it would be seven Tuesdays. And I think it only overlaps with council 2 times. And I was also going to suggest that on those nights as council and planning commission, maybe we park further away.
Jessica, what are the hours?
They are 5 to 8:30.
What's the concern on the 5th that there wouldn't be
He
enough
just
people,
said,
or
yeah, he just said it
suggested that?
turns out the day after a holiday like that, that it's just really poor turnout. And I don't, he may not be able to also get the turnout on the food trucks too. So he just recommended we don't have it that day. And then I'm asking for live entertainment and little local vendors as an option. Let's kind of see if there's an interest in that. He said he has a guy that'll come play the ukulele. So I think we put that out there and see how engaged people want to be with those 2 things.
I don't know that I would do vendors other than a food truck.
Well, I was thinking local, like the fudge guy and the kids who maybe make keychains. Not like
Yeah.
outside vendors and not booths. How would you word that? Like
Yeah, and how would you control it?
the
though?
kid, well, we would just could
I
say
allow 2
no.
people to sign up every week and it's first come, first served.
Yeah. And you have to be from Alpine.
Got to bring back the Alpine.
Does the
Highway
state lemonade stand law extend to keychains?
Yeah, maybe no.
We're
Spend an hour or
required,
2
we
with it.
required, before, as we've done this before, we required the food trucks to have a business permit.
From
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah, but to have a business permit. And that they were required to gather the garbage when they left. A couple other things, they did bring some of the live entertainment. But as far as when we started it, we were worried about control, and then we did have one time where, or 1 or 2 times where they had some vendors in sort of fights because some of them weren't being invited to come, and the boss, the guy running the thing, was playing favorites to the other vendors or the other food trucks, and so that we tried to have them work those things out, obviously, but we did get complaints from other food truck companies that they didn't get invited to come.
Well, that's the nice thing about the league is they're an intermediary and they're managing all of that. So it's their, the way they structure it and their relationships. And I think we can then evaluate at the end of the summer and say, we liked working with Elliot or we didn't like working with Elliot. But maybe having him as an intermediary solves those kinds of problems. Draper uses them and has loved using them.
I think it's better that, I think it was a service to the community. We don't have a lot of restaurants here in Alpine. I feel like it was a gathering place for our community. I understand, Lon, that, there were issues in the past. It's been a couple years. I think when we first did it, food trucks were kind of a newer thing, and I don't think they really had these different organizations that they worked through. I think it's much more organized now than it was when we first started doing it. But I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good opportunity for our community to gather and, to come out on a nice summer night. I think it's, to me, as Jessica said, it seems like more like a service to the community. It's something that we're not offering, that we don't have that ability to, but we can do this. And then we can always reevaluate,
And we wanted to keep it here just because of the exposure then and not move it to Creekside.
It kind of tapered off when it went over to Creekside.
Yeah.
Even before the pandemic, it just didn't have the same community connection.
Will we have grass and not mud by the first time?
What was the first day?
The 14th, June 14th.
There's grass there now. It's just.
Yeah, are we going to,
It's just.
are we gonna sod trenches or what we gonna do? Are we gonna
No, we're gonna
seed them?
overseed it. We're gonna
So
overseed the whole-
you'll have a problem then.
How long will that take?
2 months,
Yeah,
seed 2 months, sod 2 weeks, basically.
So we can't go.
Yeah, I'm just
if we
thinking of, we're gonna have to water, especially when you seed, you're gonna have to water at least 2 times a day, which means that those trenches are going to be muddy initially. So
What if you do it behind here? I know it won't be as visible, but there's that grass area back there, and they do have, they're facing the street.
And they have access to the bathrooms
Yeah.
and the playground. I mean, if it's there or nowhere.
But are we gonna tape off the park then, basically? I
we
mean,
can, it won't be.
I know, but if you don't do something, you're gonna,
Yeah, I mean, most of the trenches are fairly narrow.
okay.
Where we've done it before, we haven't done anything special, and it's just kind of worked out. But
Do you think we
if it
could,
becomes a problem, we
Yeah.
would.
so do you think it would be okay for us to start off there?
I
and
think it'd be
see?
better out here to keep the heavy traffic. We won't be watering this until after the kids are out of school, so that heavy traffic every afternoon won't be there. So,
I think you just run into the Creekside problem, right? If it was falling off a Creekside, back here, it's pretty much unseen.
but maybe
Or
they
if you have
get,
them parked here
yeah,
still,
and kind
parked
of,
there,
And tell them to
and
go
just,
over.
that's why I'm saying if we maybe tape off that front edge, instead of having them, like you suggested, turn their windows to the park, turn their windows to the street here, block this street off and have them move over into the park.
Well, can we pull up the map really quick? Or what if we just have them start here
over
and
there.
then when
And then
the
come
grass is
down.
hardy enough, we can move it.
Well, I was just thinking of exposure. People
Right,
would still see the trucks right here.
right.
Then they would.
We
walk.
could throw a banner out or something that night. So what if they were,
I think I like
while we're
Lon's
letting the
idea.
grass come in, they're here.
But so
How do you do
Lon,
that?
are you suggesting right along here
Yeah, we still park over there.
or right here?
Yeah, still park where
Uh-uh,
they've
it's
been
not
parking, in the parking stalls with their windows to the
To the
street.
street, okay.
So you have to click on the pencil mark on the
Mm.
left here.
Right
That's
here.
to right.
Here, and then go like that. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Park here with the windows out to
Yeah.
here. And then direct people to sit over here.
Uh-huh. Or even if you're going, whoops. Pencil. Even if you block off the street there and maybe have them, well, I see you've got a residence
You
here.
get two. that
Two
would be
residents, yeah, I
affected.
couldn't do that, sorry. Couldn't do that.
If you,
You can block it off to here,
Yeah,
though.
you can block it off. Yeah,
what if you just kind of wrapped them around this corner? Because then you have visibility from Main
so if you park with the windows open,
into
to
the
the
grass.
grass.
Mhm.
I suppose you could do that.
And because I'm worried if we park them here, people are just gonna go on
Yeah,
the
understand.
park. So if we started the season out there and they turned the corner and then when the grass is healthy enough or we determine it's ready, then we could
If it's
make that
just like a
shift.
small trenching area, though, is it really that big of a deal for one night a week for people to be on it?
Yeah, it's muddy, it's been disturbed, it's wet, and you're gonna sink. Their feet are gonna sink in a trench. If they step over it, you're okay, but I don't know, I deal with it all the time.
So what if we had that on the to be determined as we evaluate, as we get closer? Because
Yeah.
Elliot's really flexible and he understands these are, you make a decision and then you might have to make adjustments. So
I like
we can,
Lon's idea, though, of having the trucks right along here, because then people can see it as they drive by. Because I think that's, a lot of people will forget and they'll drive by and go, oh, I don't have to fix dinner. Let's go stop here.
And they park them end to end.
Yeah.
They won't try and walk back around probably to go to the
Just,
park. They
yeah.
may walk into the pavilion right
Yeah.
there. But if we tape it off around the pavilion so that they stay inside the pavilion
And then push
and then
towards the
move them
grass.
over to the.
Is there enough parking right there for the food trucks?
No, they'll have to park along
No, it's
First
pretty,
East.
that's pretty tight too.
I think they'd have to park along First East, Main Street and Center Street further down.
One other complication.
What?
Water line project that we're bidding out.
Is it going through here?
It does, Center Street.
That's
That just came to me.
When is that going?
I think we'll be bringing bids back the next council meeting.
Maybe we
Then we're
have,
striking out.
maybe we have a sign at Legacy Park due to grass growing or construction, please go to Creekside Park or something.
Or put the food trucks right there in front of City Hall and let them walk that little walkway back to the back or sit on the grass in the front, whatever they want.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when you say
I
the
think we're
water
talking about
line,
this too
what's that look like?
I believe our scope is from Main Street to 200 East. So they'll dig up, a 5-foot wide trench in the asphalt. put it
So
in.
where, show me on the map.
Straight down Center Street.
Center Street.
Okay,
Can we just make a motion to say we trust our expert city staff to identify the best place to put the food trucks?
Okay, what if we go along 100 North? How long do you think the water line project will go for?
so center's gonna be
Let
closed.
me look and see what we put.
What's the timeline on that?
So what if you parked them with their window open along there?
Mhm.
And that section of 100 East is quite a bit wider than our typical street.
So you put their windows towards the sidewalk, right, where I just drew the line right there.
Mhm. And while Legacy is revegetating, we could put
In Center Street, just have people
a
park
few
along First.
little directional things.
Yeah,
Mhm, food
I would
truck.
put a
Mhm.
big banner on Legacy Park, saying food truck.
And they have a banner that they provide that would be in front of City Hall. But I'm thinking even that evening, just to kind of direct.
truck sign, right where you've got that sign at the roundabout too.
Yeah.
Okay. What if we start there on, is that 100 that's you marked? And then if the grass gets hardy enough, then we can move to Legacy.
How long did you say the water line project
Trying
will
to
be?
find our specs here to see what we put in.
I don't think, for me, the motion doesn't include anything about location or the resolution. So
No.
it's either we want the food trucks or not,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the city can decide to put them where they want to put them,
If you'd
whenever
like
they
to make a
want to decide.
motion,
where-
go right ahead. Let's do it.
Okay,
Move us along.
I move to approve the food truck event for summer of 2022 as outlined, subject to the following condition that we do not do July 5th. And that's it.
Okay.
Staff determine where.
Sure. Staff will determine the best location for said trucks.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, we'll start with,
Do we need a roll call?
yeah, I think so. Or do we need a,
Just a voice vote.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's go to item E, conflict of interest disclosure.
So, Mayor requested us to put this on these two forms, and if you have a paper packet, mine didn't have the second one. But there are two forms. One's the conflict of interest disclosure form from the state auditor's office, and the second one is titled ethical behavior pledge form. As we looked at the
It's the fraud.
fraud risk assessment, yeah. A few meetings ago, we could gain some points if we had something like this. I think it was like 20 points, and it would put us from the moderate to low risk category. And so this is before you tonight for consideration.
Okay, do we need to do anything with this? Like they either sign it or they don't, right?
The state statute says annually you're supposed to disclose any conflicts you may have with the city. State auditors put this form together. I circulated a form I've been using for years earlier. Doesn't matter which one you sign, but we're obligated to disclose any potential conflicts. For example, if I had a business in Alpine that I controlled, I think it says 10%, 10% or more, I need to disclose that because I'm subject to Alpine's rules and regulations. And if I sat on the city council, that's somewhat problematic unless you disclose. There's nothing wrong with being on the council and having a business in the city, you know, as long as you disclose it so people know. It's kind of the theory of being transparent with your personal life in a little regard.
So when I was on planning commission, there was an agenda item from a Alpine business, and a planning commission member disclosed and recused themselves from the vote because they worked for that company. Is that also part of that disclosure?
I think it would be a subpart A, yes. I think that would be the consideration of a real potential conflict of interest. And it sounds like the planning commission member did what they needed to do, disclose and recuse.
So what do we
We-
need to do? Do we need to approve anything? This is just something that
No,
everyone fills out.
We're just throwing it out to you saying, we'd like you to sign it.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I guess there's various forms. This is one form that could be used. So
Yeah,
is that a decision the council needs to make which form we use, or just?
I think at that point we're micromanaging, just sign a form.
Well, just both of them, right? There's a
Yeah.
conflict of interest and then
Yes.
there's ethical behavior. So if you just sign both of those, I think we'll have it covered with the state auditor's office.
Let me give you an example. I served as a hearing officer for South Jordan this afternoon. Unfortunately, it dealt with RV storage. And I own an RV storage lot. And I disclosed that right up front, saying, folks, this, well, you have nothing, I have nothing to do, my business, it has nothing to do with what you're proposing today. But I'm telling you, I have some experience in this area and I do have a financial interest in a lot. I was totally transparent. The guy said, thank you. I didn't know that. So,
So Mayor, I do have a discussion though on the ethical behavior pledge form. Are we asking the employees of the city to sign this as well?
I think we're supposed to, aren't we? I
Because
think it's part of
there's
the
a few
process.
things I really have a question of as far as what does it mean? As we move
go down.
down this, I pledge to adhere to the code of ethics as approved by the governing body. These topics include, but are not limited to, improper use of official position, accepting gifts or loans, disclosing privileged information, retaining a financial or beneficial interest in a transaction, nepotism, misuse of public resources or property, outside employment. What does that mean for an employee that may not be making enough money at his job at the city and he
Doesn't
chooses?
say that they can't do it. We have a city ordinance, or we approved, I remember in previous city councils,
It's in the
that that's
personnel
okay,
policy.
moonlighting is okay, but they have to disclose it. Just say, I mean, I don't think it's not an issue that you can't do it, but we want that disclosed.
And then political activity, what does that mean?
It's pretty specific in the state code that you don't politic at work at Alpine City.
Okay, so that's what that means.
Yes,
And
you can put a campaign sign in your front yard if you want.
you can,
Yeah, absolutely.
But not
you
in your
can't
office.
do it in the office, okay? I'm just
Your-
asking for
your daughter
definition
can.
here. And then, and conduct after leaving office or employment, what does that mean?
We were having a sidebar conversation, sorry.
And conduct after leaving office or employment,
If you have confidential information
okay,
while you're here, you should protect it when you're gone.
okay, conduct, okay. Okay,
Any other questions?
There is a motion on here. Do we need to pass something? Or are we just agreeing to use?
I put
Just
that
sign
cover
this
sheet
type of
together, just assuming that, but if we don't need. to
We
do
don't
that,
need a motion. It's
Do we
Lon-
have a notary here on staff or do we need to bring this and
It's
notarize?
Bonnie.
We have
Okay.
2 or 3.
Who else is the notary?
so
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
That's
then,
awesome.
so then Craig, if there is something on this ethical pledge then that is a conflict, it is filled out on the previous pages
It should be,
then.
or an attached page to it.
Okay, that makes sense to
Let
me.
me give you an example.
Well,
of
that
it.
makes sense to me, I understand.
Let me give you an example about outside employment. I don't think our police chief would like one of his officers moonlighting at a bar that they enforce the ordinances of the city. You know, you walk in off duty and you've got somebody really, now we got a police officer employed privately at a bar where we've got alcohol being served. That's always been a classic conflict for me.
Okay,
Okay.
so if there's no further questions, we'll go on to staff
That's okay.
reports.
You wouldn't go.
Chief, anything?
Yes.
You don't want your officers enforcing the laws against them.
So after, I don't know, you guys already approved this, but on the firework map with Highlands map, it actually lines up perfect now. Highland comes all the way to Westfield or 11,800, so that really puts the, puts the line perfect. And then I just wanted to speak for all of public safety and just tell you guys thanks. It means a ton for what we do and moving forward and everything as far as retention. And also right now, while both departments are in the recruitment process, if we're moving forward, it's understood that the city support us. So we appreciate the support. I know it's been a process, but thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you guys. Hey, Austin, do you have anything for us?
I just have one quick item. Let me throw this up on the screen. So we recently received a request from the proper business owner of this building right here. So this is just commonly called the Water Wheel Building. It's right next to the bridge on Canyon Crest Road. He wants to expand his parking lot here to the, so let me just draw. He wants to kind of bring his parking lot out over here. Add a few more spaces. I guess my question is this something that the city council is interested in seeing, or do you feel comfortable with this being approved at a staff level? Technically, it's in the business commercial zone. He's changing the site plan by adding more
Is
parking.
that getting exceptionally close to the creek there?
It does get close to the creek. Jet's kind of initially looked at so that there is a floodplain area. We've looked at that. It doesn't actually interfere with the floodplain, but those would be things that we'd look at a staff level, like the floodplain, drainage, parking lot drainage, and those types of things.
Well, and isn't there like special permitting or something required when you're within 30 feet of either any kind of waterway? So those kinds of things would be addressed.
Yeah. So if he's going to do anything in the floodplain, there is floodplain. He has to get a floodplain permit to do that.
I don't think that's what she's talking about, anything in a
It's a
waterway.
division of water, right? It's a relatively new
Right.
couple of years or something, right?
Mhm.
Change,
Oh.
so.
So that needs
The
to be
division
made
out,
sure
yeah.
that that's.
Mhm.
I can send that.
Does he
we
have
get-
to buy some more property from that other place then? Because it looks like.
He does not. He actually, his property, and I probably should actually bring up the county map. Maybe it'd be better.
We bring this up, it just seems like a little bit of a gray area, because it's not a brand new site plan, it's not a change of use. It's just expansion of a parking lot, but we didn't want to have, approve something at the staff level and then have someone ask, well, how come we didn't see that or whatever? So we just, since it was a gray area, just looking for a little bit of feedback.
Okay.
from council.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, he's
and
got
can we
plenty.
request a trail easement, along that?
We've discussed that.
Okay.
We
that'd be
haven't
excellent.
discussed it with the property owner yet, but we discussed it as staff as we work through it with this with him.
So do you guys have any direction you want to get lost in?
I prefer it to come back to go through the normal process with it being an historical gateway committee and all. Historical
Right.
gateway area.
Greg, what do you think?
I mean, I'd be fine. I think it's a good idea because it sounds like they're just short there. I'd love to get that, official trail connection there.
So do you want it to come back, or do you want staff to take care of it? What's your preference?
I don't know, as long as it works out well, I'd be fine. Bring it back would be great, just so we can.
Kelly, what's your preference?
Austin, can you, I don't know, scroll up or whatever so I can see the one next to it? Because that other parking lot looks like it goes.
Yeah, it's really close.
Everyone there goes super close to the creek too.
So when all of these buildings were built,
I can go either way.
the middle one's older, but the two on either side, the water wheel building, the one on the other side, they're newer, 10, 12 years old, maybe something like that. Back then, we didn't have the detailed floodplain maps that we have now. They were very general and some kind of estimations had to be made because the floodplain was from a non-detailed study. So the way it ended up, we did a good job back then keeping things out of the floodplain, but we have better information to work with now.
I think for me, I mean, it's on his property, and if I needed to change my driveway a little bit, I mean, I'd be like,
So is your
Just one.
preference that staff? Okay, we have 2 to come back, 1 for staff. Where are you at, Jessica?
I'm fine with staff handling
Staff,
that.
what about you, Lon?
I think staff could take care of that.
Okay, so Austin, you got, I think the majority is saying that you guys can handle it.
Can I ask one more question on this?
Surely.
So a few years ago, I think it was back kind of the tail end of Jason Bond's career here. We were trying to work, or he was trying to work with this property owner, and I think it's the same guy, on a property swap. If you can maybe zoom back in to show that a little bit better, Austin. So the city trail is in city open space. Let's see. Right here to there. And then from that point, it goes across private property to there and then goes back to city open space. So we were trying to work a property swap this for a little bit here,
Mhm.
kind of as I remember, a square foot for square foot trade. He was talking to us for a while and then it kind of just tapered off and he wouldn't respond. I think we should try to firm that up, and even if it's easements and not actually swapping property. He's got landscaping on our property. He maintains it. I think it's fine. It should probably have an agreement with us, but we could maybe use that as a bit of a bargaining chip.
That
Try
would be
to
great.
Get this worked out.
so given that, let me ask you a question, you and Austin. I mean, what would you guys prefer? Would you prefer to have the city council as kind of like backstop to approve this? Or do you feel comfortable moving forward with it?
I'll speak. Austin can disagree with me if he wants to. I'll take it up with him after. But I'm just kidding. I think we can take care of it. It's just one of those deals, like, you want to have a good relationship with your council, so we didn't want to go do something and then be questioning why we did it. So I suggested to Austin that we just bring it up tonight and see, since the ordinance isn't really clear on a restructure or an expansion of the parking lot. One thing we know for sure, we'd have to make sure that the 20% landscaping is still met.
And
They're
it
not
looks like it would
taking
be.
parking stalls away, they would be adding to. So in our mind, it could be a staff item, but we're just looking for clarification.
So that may be a reason for a land swap there to get their landscape.
I think they can still meet it.
Yeah, it looks like they can because it's just 20%.
Yeah.
I think if you can get the easements or the land swap worked out with the trail, I think that's what would be interesting. That's probably what would be important to me.
That's what I'm thinking. I think I'd like to hear from you again if that doesn't happen.
Mhm.
But if you think you're pretty confident in that trail I've been on that trail quite a bit. It can be kind of nice. It's probably worn down now.
Yeah, so I might be taking it a step far to make it a condition of, allowing him to expand. But I think it's a good opportunity to discuss this because the guy lives out of state. So I think in my mind, they're kind of two separate deals, but we can talk about
Have
them
that
together.
discussion.
Do you have any other thoughts, Austin?
No, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I don't have anything yet to add. I mean, it is a good opportunity to revisit that exchange, and you can see that our bridge is actually located on his property, so that's kind of a interesting part of that. And it'd be nice if we had that on our own property.
Well, and that's part of the floodplain though, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is.
and the city built that bridge and put it there.
So I
And
just
we didn't do it further down.
That's the best place to get the trail off of Canyon Crest to there, I guess. So,
So maybe, just for, I mean, one thing I think, especially with this dog thing, you know, I think we can learn, city planning commission can learn, you know, all the things are required in site plan. I would be really interested in, how this pertains to, 3.11.0.030, when it talks about why a site plan would be required in the historic gateway zone. And in there, it talks about if anything there, what it seems to me is if there's any modification with the landscape. So I'm just curious if, just look at that and tell me maybe next time what you think on
okay.
if it's saying what I think it's saying or it's not.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, the Gateway Historic was less landscaping and more the building, but I probably need to review it and make sure.
And Jason makes a really good point. And the other thing is too, you kind of brought this to us because you said there's maybe some gray area in the ordinance, and is there something we should do to make it not gray? So next time we don't have to.
Yeah.
Do you just want to bring it back? It sounds like we've got a swing. Just bring it back, or if you just want to work with.
No, I mean, again, I'm just curious if the ordinance tells us we need to do it or if it is a gray area. So that's my thing. Just take a look at that.
Okay.
Because it says that it's required based on landscaping modifications. So it's interesting what it says.
And that code reference was in the Gateway Historic.
Yeah. 3.11.030.
Okay, we'll take a look.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Craig,
I don't have anything specific tonight. Done our thing.
Lonnie? No. Shane?
So for the budget, we've got scheduled for June 28th for the final budget to be adopted. I thought it would be beneficial at our next meeting on the 14th to devote all or probably all of our work session to discussion of the budget and just go through any things. We'll go over the property tax stuff and all that at that meeting. So I've met with several of you. If anybody else has any questions or wants to meet, I'm happy to do it. So should have time this week. Let's see, the Healy Park Pavilion was installed today. We just need to put the concrete pad in now, and the area for the playground's being dug out, and we need some concrete work done there. And I'm hopeful within sometime in June, it will be totally complete there. So I think it looks good. I think that's all I have tonight.
Just Craig, I still would like an email copy or a copy of the Blue Bison matter.
Oh, shoot, my phone.
That's all for me.
Jessica?
We're getting some calls on when the poppies are gonna be in bloom because photographers are making appointments in 20-minute increments. And so we put it out on Facebook that it's closed, but I think we need to expand our messaging to Instagram because I think anyone under the age of 35 won't be getting that information. So I wanted to see if council was supportive of getting a city Instagram page. And it would just only have what we post on Facebook. But at least we're reaching, I think, probably the demographic that's going to be out there with cameras and a following before they get out there.
So yeah, I was talking to Shane about it earlier today. He was thinking that was a good idea.
Okay. And then I thought that presentation on fiber was amazing. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna do anything or is that for later?
I think
It
we,
just was
I said we
fabulous.
follow the steps. I think he said he had some names, so I was gonna just meet with him again and
Okay.
see who he thought would have government experience. Because if we can have his technical and someone with government experience and a couple other people, and then go forward with that, it's just, I guess I was disappointed that there was so much infiltration by Comcast, that they're so heavily bought in that it is harder. Like the reports that I've seen, it seems like when Comcast has heavily infiltrated a city, the take rate is a lot lower. And so it's gonna be a financial decision.
What
And it
about
looks
even
like-
backing up though and getting just the residents' feedback on it? I
Yeah,
have a
no, I
feeling
like
that-
what he said. Like,
that,
we
yeah.
have 10,000 residents or 10,000 people that can basically vote in Alpine, right? And we've had 112 respond from the newsletter. I think he has I do think we need a larger sample to get an idea of what the residents actually want, because that's such a small percentage that it's not significant enough to base any kind of decision on. So whenever you do any kind of survey, you have to have you have to have a random sampling and you have to have a significant sampling, or at least a representative sampling. And I don't think that's.
I thought his idea on, doing a more thorough, maybe paying a group to go door to door or something. So yeah, out of maybe 2,500 homes, we've heard from 110. And what we might be able to do is, because, and I haven't seen raw data or anything, but they put in addresses, we could kind of extrapolate a little bit and see what the areas might look like.
Yes.
I did receive a couple of phone calls regarding
Fiber.
the article that Greg did with the surveys. And I had people actually calling, some older residents calling to sign up for the fiber optics. And I had to explain to them that it was just a survey. So I think the door-to-door thing sounds a lot better than the QR codes, because some of
Yeah,
our
'cause
older
they didn't know
residents
what to
don't
do.
understand that. So that's a little bit of feedback from the residents.
And I
Yeah.
think that if you're not kind of having a pain piece, you may not answer a survey, but if someone came and asked you, do you want fiber? You would say yes.
Yeah.
So,
And the next question is, do you want fiber at this cost, right?
And yeah, and the data that we have, that respondents, it's very positive. The only challenge is that it's like, it's not very big.
Such a small
Right,
sample.
and the market dynamics are such that you would think it would make sense. So in other words, if you look at how they're responding on price and they're representative at all, would about 80, it makes sense for probably 85%, who knows, but that's you just can't be sure.
Right, but you have what
Yeah.
you have to weigh that against what, Lon said last time, as far as he wants everything bundled, he doesn't want to have to deal with moving it over. So you have that dichotomy that you have to kind of, and that's why I would like to get a larger sample and really get an idea before we invest in it. I wish there was a way that we could get significant funding source to help with that. And then the question, to me, the decision would be so much easier. But when you're talking about such a huge chunk and not really knowing what the take rate is going to be and what the city is going to be on the line for, to me, it's a little bit more risky. And I'm the one, I'm one of the first ones out there that would want fiber to my house, yeah, I don't know. Anything
okay,
else,
that's
Jess?
it. Thank you.
Okay, I don't really, Kelly,
Nothing, thank you.
Greg?
Just that I think we should look at the business signage in our gateway district to be sure that we have a review, like a design review on that, because we define, the roof, the architectural style, the color of the door, all this, but then they can come in and put on a big bright orange sign, right, that doesn't match anything and can be kind of distracts from the whole feeling of what we're trying to get Main Street to look like. So I think, and I don't think that's clear. I mean, I don't think we necessarily have that authority for a sign review in terms of architecture. I think that would be worthwhile. Because it's so elemental, right? As you drive around, what you do notice is the signs. And some of them are just not great, and that's natural, right?
Maybe, yeah, so maybe the Main Street committee could work on something like that. Or if you want to work on it with Austin to get more specific, come up with the draft. Jason?
So then can we turn in these ethical forms, pledge forms today?
If you want.
Okay.
Jason, if I could visit with you about property taxes, I'll tell you why I said what we said.
And then just that we've got the Memorial Day program coming Monday, starting at 8 a.m. If you guys wanted to stop by, Lynn Higgins, who has been in a horrific car accident, has agreed to MC the event. And then Alpine Youth Council will be helping, so.
So he's back on.
He is, we
Well, can we
didn't
help?
find
How
anyone.
can we help then? Because I've always helped. I've been there to help him
right,
lift
so
things out. and-
Jessica and I met with him on Monday. They didn't have a speaker, but I spoke with his wife who was out of town and she agreed to be the speaker this Monday. So I
Okay.
think we've got it all there. If you could just come and support, that would be
Yeah.
great.
You
we
know,
have a
she is a
chaplain.
colonel.
Yes, she outranks him.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, Shane told me that. So I asked him, I'm
does
like, what
because
about your
she's
wife?
mother.
Because she
Yeah.
would be so amazing.
She's amazing.
And I think he just didn't, he's like, will you ask her? I'm like, I'll ask her. I have no problem asking her. And so she reluctantly agreed. So I'm very happy about that. And then,
Well, maybe if you can come at like 7:30 because
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
a lot of people are, I mean, it's been a couple years. And
it's been a
so
while.
it's kind of like, what do we do here? I don't know.
And then I think Jessica could use some help setting up with the tables. We've worked with Cal. He's got all the stuff laid out, but like the tables, they'll have to put,
Cover
all the
them.
neighbor goods, just little things like that. So if you can work with Jessica, that would be
Okay.
awesome. Thank you, Lon. That's it for me. So I'll entertain a motion to,
Make a motion, we adjourn.
is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?